Welcome to The Currency of Grief, the podcast where we confront two of society's most taboo topics, death and money. My name is Justin Weidenfeld, and I'm here to serve as your grief financial officer, guiding you through the complex and emotional journey of what happens when money and mortality collide. Whether you're navigating the aftermath of losing a loved one, looking for practical advice on handling pre- and post-death planning, or simply just wanting to start those hard conversations about legacy while you still can, this space is for you. Together, we'll hear real-life stories from real-life people who have navigated the intersection of grief and money and come out the other side. Our guests will share their stories, practical insights, valuable advice, and moments of clarity so that none of you have to navigate this alone. I'm grateful you've decided to join us on this journey. Now let's dive in. So without further ado, let's meet our guests for today's podcast. Brian Helfman is the founder and chief experience officer at Third Nature. Brian creates events and experiences that help individuals and organizations cultivate clarity, creativity, and connection, all while having fun, the key element there. He is also the program director at Experience Camps for the Adults, FTA, an incredible adult grief retreat weekend that I plan to attend in 2026. Brian and I met when his mom was my first ever grief specialist at Experience Camps. We had a conversation a couple months back and recognized the countless connections between our grief stories. And I knew Brian had to be on the podcast. So Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, I for a moment forgot about the fact that my mom was your grief specialist that summer at PennX. I love that. It's just another one of many points of connection in our journeys.
I think that's going to be a common theme here of the similarities and the connections in our journeys, and I'm excited to explore it. But Brian, including and on top of those, when I told you about the currency of grief, and I think you've listened to a couple past episodes as well, what made you want to come on the podcast and share your story?
Well, and something you said just now really resonated, which is, death is this inevitable part of life. It's literally the only thing that every person that's ever lived is guaranteed to experience, right? People say death and taxes, but you can get out of taxes. Maybe we shouldn't say that on the Currency of Grief podcast. Your grief financial officer won't recommend getting out of taxes, but death is unarguably a little less avoidable than taxes, right? It's the one thing that we're all guaranteed to experience, yet talking about it has become so taboo in our society, and preparing for it has become so taboo and something that people really shy away from. And I've always felt that that's really backwards. The one true inevitability is something that we should meditate on and prepare ourselves for, financially, logistically, emotionally, spiritually. So I love the mission and the core purpose of your work in this podcast. And then, as you mentioned during our conversation a couple months ago, just really enjoyed that conversation and finding so many additional points of connection in our stories, from, again, my mom being your bunk's grief specialist at PennX that summer, to both of our fathers being named Donald. And I think that came up at the very end of the conversation when you were like, oh, by the way, I host this charity golf outing in Florida. There it is. What is it? WWDD?
What would Don do?
Exactly. And when you said that, I was like, why is it called What Would Don Do? And you were like, because that's my dad's name. That was my dad's name. And I said, that was my dad's name. And then to top it all off, it's at Boca West Country Club in Boca Raton, Florida, where my dad's brother, my uncle, is a member. And the three of us played countless rounds of golf. So looking forward to that. Also, it's on 420, and my dad was a big pothead. I don't know if I should have said that, but
that's perfectly fine. I mean, he's unfortunately not here to rebut it or challenge you. So,
He
it is
wouldn't.
what it is. There's the facts.
He wouldn't rebut it.
I love it. So we alluded to your dad. We alluded to Don and Donald. Um, so Brian, tell us a little bit about your grief story. Who was Don? How did he pass away? And who are the other characters involved?
Yeah, so my dad, Donald, died in 2012. He was 55. I was 23. So I was about a year and a half out of college, working in corporate America, ad sales at CBS. And my immediate family was we mentioned my mom. My parents were separated at the time. They had separated, I think, 5 years before my dad died. So they weren't living together. And might get into that a little more. They had a bit of an ugly separation, but also reconciled a bit towards the end. And then my sister, Danny, has special needs. So the loss was especially difficult for her, and still is. It's still challenging, presents ongoing challenges for all of us. So that was the immediate family, and then my dad's parents were still alive, who also live in Boca, or did at the time. His mom's still alive. I'm going to see her next week in South Florida. And yeah, I mean, witnessing them lose a son was just gut wrenching, And then my dad's brother, Dennis, my uncle, who I mentioned, who lives at Boca West, who I'm trying to get into this golf tournament. He and my dad were very close as well. So amazing. I think those were the principal grievers, as they say.
Yeah. And how did your dad pass away?
He had cancer, and he battled cancer for 6 years, which I didn't know when he died. I didn't know it was 6 years. He told me that he had cancer. I remember in the car when he was dropping me off at the airport after winter break, my junior year of college. So I was heading back to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan, and he kind of like casually told me he had bladder cancer. So this was end of 2009 or beginning of 2010. And yeah, he passed a little over 2 years later. And I didn't even know until I saw the death certificate, cause of death, bladder cancer, 6 years. And I was like, 6 years? So he had it for like 3.5 years before he told me. And that was kind of the person that my dad was. He was very private about certain things. He was a larger than life personality, had a ton of friends. And yeah, I think in a lot of ways was very outgoing and fun. A lot about my dad, he was a complicated guy. And some things on the surface might sound conflicting, but yeah, he was like very, again, larger than life, very outgoing, very open in a lot of ways, but also very private in some ways. So I think with the cancer, he largely kept that to himself for a lot of his battle with it.
Yeah. In addition to the cancer and kind of like the holding off on having that conversation for 3 years, it sounds like, is there a specific story that you have where, he led this conflicting life, but also the type of person he was in your life as well?
And I don't want to say he led a conflicting life. I think he lived very authentically. He was very himself in all aspects of his life. But there are so many things I could say. He worked in the garment center in a family business that his grandfather started. And he made it very clear to me growing up that he did not enjoy work. Work was not to be enjoyed. Work was a means to an end. A game that we play, and the winners of this game are the ones that are able to acquire the most financial security, so that if they're lucky, they can enjoy the back nine of their lives. My dad, as we've discussed, was a big golfer. And he didn't just look forward to enjoying the back nine of his life that he never got to experience. And again, he loved to have fun. He was a big partier. And yeah, I think one of the things that I admired most about him and have embraced as something that I learned from him was just how good a friend he was, how inclusive he was, how accepting of people he was, and how generous he was with his time, with his money. And so there's all that. And then, you know, I personally had, you know, I think we had a complicated relationship growing up. He always had very high expectations for me in school and sports, with friends, with women, all aspects of life, and high expectations for what I would grow up to become. And I never felt like I met those expectations. And he was very critical of me growing up. He was my hero in so many ways. And I desperately just wanted to make him proud of me. And I think he was proud of me, but he just had a hard time articulating that. And again, we had a very tense relationship. And the house that I grew up in held a lot of tension. Tension between him and my mom. I mentioned they were separated towards the end of his life. And yeah, so when I talk about him, I feel like sometimes people have a hard time understanding who he was. So in that sense, I guess you could say he was a complicated or complex man, but it all makes sense to me, you know? And I think it's actually helped me as I've gotten older hold space for the complexity and complications in all of us. That maybe just aren't fully expressed or expressed in different realms of life or under the surface. But I see people as both simple and complicated. And I think my dad taught me that.
It sounds like on the one hand, you know, he's this larger than life figure. He's a partier. He loves to have fun. He has this tradition of Wednesday night hoops. He goes on a ski trip with his friends. He comes home for dinner every night besides Wednesday. You know, those are simple and things that you want to see in your dad and you want him to be around. And then there's also, you know, this complexity where high expectations, is successful, wants you to be successful, wants the best for you. And like a lot of men in this world, you know, struggle a little bit to show, you know, that they're proud of their kids or the emotion behind it, or settles with, you know, this is good enough for me.
Exactly. Really, really well encapsulated there.
Amazing. What, so what year did he pass away?
2012.
Okay. And so when he passed away of cancer, you know, what was the immediate step that you took next? What had to be done immediately?
Well, literally immediately. And I was not prepared for this at all. But he chose at-home hospice, which I get why he chose that, but I don't know if he was as comfortable as he could have been if he was in a proper hospice facility when he died. And I holds a lot of guilt around that and have a hard time like thinking about that. But it's, I don't know. His last hours just didn't.
Well,
Yeah. Is there a question there?
I was just gonna say, like, why at home like, why do you feel like it wasn't the right place for your dad?
Well, again, I get why he wanted that, because he loved, I mean, our home was his sanctuary, you know. I think that was where he was most comfortable. Who likes hospitals, right? And he had been in and out of hospitals enough, and I think when the doctor said there was nothing else they can do, and he has, 3 to 6 months to live, he was like, all right, I'm just gonna like go home and try to be as comfortable as I can be. But yeah, we didn't really have like the proper, nursing doctors like on site there to serve and support him on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis. I mean, a lot of family and friends around. But we, a lot of us, my uncle especially, to be honest, and my dad's girlfriend at the time, like, learned a lot about how to make sure he had everything he needed and was comfortable. But neither of them are doctors or nurses, right? And I have learned a lot more about hospice care since then, and I know there are a lot of hospice facilities that just do a wonderful job of preparing people and families for death, those last days, weeks, or months. So,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that as a 23-year-old, right?
Right. That's something you don't prepare for, is losing
Yeah.
your dad at 55 and you being 23. What was the first initial step after he passed?
Yeah. So I started to say I was not prepared for this at all, but the, I guess, coroners came.
Yeah.
And I again, you just don't think about this, or I didn't think about this, but yeah, I had to watch him be put in a body bag. Sorry if that's graphic for listeners. It's graphic for me to recall, but that was the immediate next step. And it was just horrible. It was a horrible, horrible night. It was August 4th, 2012. And our whole family was there. Everyone kind of knew it was imminent. And I remember my dad's girlfriend, who was Christian. We grew up Jewish. She had like a priest come over, and everyone was like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, why is there and there again? My dad died 5 minutes ago. There's like someone rings the doorbell. It's a priest, ready to like bless our house or something, bless his body. I don't know, but everyone's freaking out. Like, no one's on the same page. It was a mess. It was a mess. And so that was like the immediate aftermath. But then I remember eventually everyone left, and I was the only one who slept in that house that night. And I honestly really appreciated that. That was what I needed and I think wanted at the time, was just like time to be alone, time to sit in solitude and reflect and think and cry and start the grieving process. But as you know, and as anyone who's been through anything like this knows, shortly after that, it's like, okay, now you have to tell everyone. I remember texting, I think, 3 of my best friends, 4 of my best friends. I remember exactly who I texted, and I said, just like, get the word out, tell people. So I had like, contact people in different parts of my life, delivering funeral and Shiva information. And all that happens so fast, right? You get like right into logistics. Okay, now we're at the funeral home, planning the funeral. And there's like different family members involved and no one like knows what to do and who's in charge. And, you know, again, it was messy.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we talked about this, but I'm not 100% sure. My dad also passed away August 4th, like 2018. And
Yeah.
just another one of those similarities, both
Crazy.
Donald. Um,
I I feel like we did talk about that because there were, again, so many just like electric points of connection,
yeah.
cosmic points of connection in that conversation, but I don't remember talking about it, and it sounds like you don't either. So
When you said August 4th, it like triggered something in me.
if we're just uncovering that now, that's wild. Just
Yeah.
another point of connection in our stories.
Yeah. So you mentioned you reached out to a couple of friends. What was it like going back to your previous life in New York, having experienced your loss and also receiving so much more responsibility?
Yeah, very tough. So you mentioned the responsibility. I, in a sense, and I think a lot of young men who lose a father experience this, kind of becoming the man of the house. And again, my house was separated, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that my parents were separated. But yeah, since then, I feel like I've taken on a lot of responsibility with my mom and my sister, just making sure they are taken care of in all the ways. And these responsibilities, I think, getting back to like how things shifted in my life back in New York with my friends and coworkers, I just felt like my problems were so unrelatable, and the problems and priorities that my friends were worried about and talking about just felt so, I don't want to say insignificant, because like, I empathize with a breakup. I actually went through a breakup around this time. It was really painful, but yeah, I just felt less connected, less relatable to my peers.
Yeah.
And that was probably for me one of, if not the most difficult things about those next few months.
Yeah. It's isolating. You
Yeah.
feel like everybody's talking about, oh no, like I didn't get the reservation at the restaurant that I wanted,
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. And everybody, there's different priorities for different problems, but losing a father and then having to take care of your mom and your sister, those are heightened responsibilities that you have taken on. And even at work, I'm sure, at least for me, like school didn't have the same impact to me. I ended up doing the best I had done all 4 years in
Oh,
college,
wow.
senior year, and I tried less because I was so consumed with the estate and going home and seeing family and stuff like that. So, did work just feel like it wasn't as meaningful to
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. And that's interesting that you feel like you tried less and did better. Maybe there's a
Yeah.
lesson in that. Um, or cared less about school, but yet did better. Um, yeah, I mean, I went back to work, and I I really enjoyed that job for the year and a half that I was there before my dad died. It was very entrepreneurial. I had a lot of autonomy. Um, I loved going into the office every day. I didn't love commuting, but like I loved my group of friends at work. And after my dad died, I was very grateful to have the friends that I had at work. But yeah, I was checked out. I went from like, oh, I could see myself here for 3 to 5 years. I never thought I'd be there forever, but I never thought I would be gone 3 months later, and I was. Um, So my dad died in August, and very quickly I was like planning my exit strategy. What's next? And for me, I mentioned my dad's kind of outlook on life. And it wasn't necessarily an outlook on life that he invented. It definitely wasn't his authentic outlook on life. I think this is an outlook on life and work that a lot of people subscribe to, which is, again, work is a means to an end. Work is not supposed to be fun. It's supposed to help you acquire enough financial security so that you can enjoy your life outside of work. And if you're lucky, you get to retire early and enjoy, as I said earlier, the back nine of your life. But when my dad died at 55, I was like, that's bullshit. That doesn't make sense anymore. And my dad was 55, right? You could die at 45, 35, 25. And I also just started to think about like the quality of my years. In other words, it's not just that my dad died at 55, it's that he spent the prime years of his life, the prime hours during the prime years of his life, right? His 20s, 30s, 40s, working a job that he didn't enjoy. I wouldn't say hated. It was a family business. Him and his brother, I think, had a lot of fun. But my point being, I mean, that wasn't an option for me. They closed that business years before my dad died. But I didn't want to sacrifice the prime hours during the prime years of my life for some possible yet uncertain future. But I didn't know what I wanted to do for work. It wasn't like, oh, light bulb, Third Nature, which is the business that I'm building now. But I knew it wasn't ad sales at CBS. So the first thing I did was when planning that exit strategy was just like, I was open about it. And I was talking to friends about it. And I had one friend, Matt, who I grew up with, who came back from Hawaii for my dad's funeral. He graduated college, moved out to Hawaii, and was coming back to the continental US to become a ski instructor in Colorado for the winter. And I was like, this guy's got it figured out.
Absolutely.
Or something in some way. And I remember talking to him, and it was one of those cosmic moments like we just had with August 4th, where I was like asking him about the upcoming winter, his plans. And I asked him, oh, by the way, what mountain are you going to teach at? And he said, oh, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Beaver Creek in Colorado. And I'm like, no fucking way. That was literally, I mentioned my dad and his friends went on a ski trip every year. And he took us skiing, in Vermont, but we spent a few years going out to Colorado and we always went to Beaver Creek. That was like his favorite mountain.
Wow.
So I'm like, holy shit, Beaver Creek, that was my dad's favorite mountain. And they had, part of the reason we went there is they had an adaptive program that was great for skiers with special needs. And I mentioned my sister had special needs. My sister has special needs. She has cerebral palsy. So that was another reason we went there.
Mm-hmm.
So the light bulb went off in that moment where like, I don't know if I want to be a ski instructor for the rest of my life, but this seems like a cool kind of intermission between like act 1 and act 2 of my life, where maybe I'll like figure some shit out while I'm out there and have fun. And so long story short, that's what I did. I left my job at CBS in November, and Thanksgiving weekend, me and Matt drove out from Long Island to Beaver Creek, Colorado, where we spent the next 5 months.
I love that. That's amazing. It sounds like there's a really big, transformation in your mind when it came to work after your dad passed away and he was no longer there and he didn't get to live the back nine, as he would call it. What was it like for you? And was there any sort of transformation or philosophy shifts when the doctors sent your dad home and said, there's nothing more we can do? Like hearing those words, especially at 55, and then for him to live another, 3 or 6 months longer, that's probably really challenging.
Really challenging. I remember being in the room with my family, my uncle, my cousins, I think my grandparents, my dad's parents, hearing that, people crying. And then, you know what? I think that's when I started journaling. So I think had a journal in like kindergarten when it was assigned as part of class. And I've actually found some of those kindergarten journal entries. They're really fun. But
that's amazing.
I'm pretty sure it was right around the time that I got that news, because I still have that black and white marble composition notebook literally in my briefcase below this desk over here. And I look back in it from time to time. The first entry is from May 2012. And it's just about time. And it's not directly about my dad, but it's just kind of me coming to terms with the passage of time and how much time we have, but how little time we have on this earth. And all those thoughts were coming up for me during those last few months of my dad's life. And I think for me, really coming to terms with death and the finality of it, in a way really catalyzed me down this path of like being more reflective and mindful of my own lived experience, both past, present, and future.
Yeah.
And wanting to live more purposefully. So that was a big shift that, again, really started, I think, when my dad got that death sentence.
Yeah. And for those who also are feeling the same way, because I think a lot of grievers feel that way, is I want to live now my shortened life, because if my dad died at 55, or in my case 52, I only have X more years to go. So how can I live more purposeful and fulfilled? You mentioned becoming a ski instructor in Colorado. You mentioned journaling. How did you process what felt right for you? What were the strategies that you would say like worked best for you to navigate those emotions?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just said it: journaling and time in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of writing, and being in Colorado for that winter, being in the mountains, teaching was something I really loved. Growing up, my mom always said I would be a great teacher. And fittingly, based on what I shared earlier about, I think the conditioned way of approaching work in my family and many families, my response was always, teachers don't make any money. Our teachers don't make enough money.
Yeah.
But becoming a ski instructor in this beautiful mountain town in Colorado opened up my eyes to like, oh, teaching doesn't necessarily have to be me standing in front of a classroom, in front of a chalkboard, like, the kind of teaching that I understood growing up. And I was a ski instructor for that winter. Again, I didn't become a full-time ski instructor for life, although
if anyone needs lessons.
Yeah, sure. Well, no, I'm not taking lessons right now, but I know people who are, and I have a lot of friends who, never left and love that lifestyle. And I love that for them. But for me, it was that experience really opened my eyes to, teaching can be many things. And I didn't know that it could be, the kind of work I do now, which is more facilitation and coaching type work. But I was able to get there, I think, partially because of how that experience opened my mind to different possibilities for myself. I think all of us learn more about ourselves and uncover different parts of ourselves. So for me, that was really helpful at that time because I, again, wanted to live with more purpose and in deeper alignment with my essence, my strengths, my values. And that was kind of the start of that journey.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Our last guest, Rhett Taylor, he facilitates vision quests in nature. And when his mom died, he went to nature. And so what you're saying is a lot of things that, we've heard. It works. There's a reason it works. It's worked for many years. And to find context, to change up your environment, to learn about yourself. Psychologically, this is a new normal going forward, not having a parent there that's been there for you for the 23 years of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to refine yourself and redefine your purpose.
Yeah, I mean, that right there is a huge context switch, right? Who am I without this person around?
Yeah.
Who am I without this huge influence in my life? And for me, I was like, I'm going to steer into the skid. I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to not blow everything up, but temporarily leave the city, leave the life that I've known and experience myself somewhere completely new and different.
Yeah. And what's ironic is you went to a town where you were still familiar because you had your dad's presence there.
That's 100%. And I felt his presence a lot throughout that winter in really powerful ways.
That's special. So we're going to navigate to the money section of this podcast.
Oh boy.
Here we go. So we talked about the initial action steps of coordinating a funeral and the coroners and everything happening. But what role did you take on financially and logistically after your dad passed away?
So because my parents were separated and my sister has special needs, the majority of my dad's estate went to me. I mentioned he had a girlfriend at the time. She got some money as well. And I was happy about that because she was so good to him. And just such a kind person. But yeah, I went from being an average 23-year-old, kind of living paycheck to paycheck, in a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 other guys. So 3 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was a nice apartment, but a pretty normal existence of a post-grad living in New York City, just trying to make it in America. Never saw that show, but I heard good things. To again, being way less relatable with this inheritance, which included the house I grew up in. So one responsibility was selling that house. And obviously we had a real estate broker who handled most of that, but I was very involved in that process. That took 2 years. Just moving out of that house was a massive undertaking. We lived there or my dad at least lived there, I guess 20 years. And I learned this after he died. He was kind of a hoarder. So going through his stuff was such an undertaking. Notes on notes and just all these different things from his life that meant something to him that we're deciphering. And a lot of it, didn't mean much to us. A lot of it meant a lot to us. Me and my mom were the ones who and my uncle and some of my dad's close friends, you know, spent a lot of time going through that stuff, divvying up clothing. And he had this epic, incredible collection of Grateful Dead cassette tapes. He was a big Deadhead, probably went to close to 1,000 shows. And he was like tight with the soundboard guys. So he would bring a blank cassette tape to every show, and they would like record the live show onto these cassettes. He had hundreds of them. I also played a big role, I think, in, helping to manage my sister's money. So my dad's brother was the executor of my sister's trust. So he really controlled her money, but him and my mom didn't have the best relationship. So I became my sister. When my dad died, I became my sister's co-guardian with my mom. She lived with my mom at the time. She has since moved to a group home. But as my sister's co-guardian, I really took that responsibility to heart. And I think for my whole life, but especially since my dad died, have tried to do everything in my power with the time that I have, outside of work and just like being a normal human, make sure she's taken care of and happy and healthy. But yeah, for a lot of those early years after my dad died, it was kind of playing intermediary between my uncle and my mom around my sister's finances.
Yeah.
And what we can use this money for, what we're not supposed to use this money for. And we still have arguments about that to this day. And yeah, that I guess was stuff that was.
Were there any discrepancies that, given the dynamics, like that you had to step in and solve? And yeah, we'll start with that.
It was a lot of, my mom, who didn't get anything when my dad passed. She got money when they never officially got divorced because my dad was on my mom's healthcare plan. My mom was a school social worker and had good health insurance. So they were technically still married so that my dad could stay on that health insurance plan. And my mom, again, got money in their separation agreement. But when my dad died, my mom, I think she actually had some ownership stake in the house. And so she got money when we sold that house. But she was kind of resentful of that, I think, especially taking on really like full responsibility as my sister's caregiver. I was more co-guardian in name. She was like literally like
paying the bills for your sister.
Yeah, and my sister was living with her.
Right.
And bills directly tied to my sister's needs were paid for by the trust that set up. But you asked about discrepancies, things like vacations that my mom and sister would go on, or meals out, or trips to the nail salon, or, any number of activities or things that they might spend money on together. My mom thought it was perfectly justifiable for the trust to pay for those types of expenses. Whereas my uncle, at times, I think he became more, what's the word? Lenient, like easy with that kind of stuff. But sometimes, and for, I think those first few years, there was a lot of like, this money has to last the rest of her life. We don't want to deplete it with, your manicures and flights and so
right,
kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really challenging because especially in the first couple of years, there's an element of whose money is this? Is this Don's money still? Is this the sister's money? Is because your uncle's in charge, is it your uncle's money because he's in charge of it? Or is it, who it's in transition. So it's like kind of in the middle. And there's a lot of emotions around that. And we have there's obviously a trust drafted to take care of to take care of Danny, but the intentions and the desires of what your dad may have wanted were probably not dictated. There's no line item that says like, please use for trips, but not the nail salon.
Exactly.
That wasn't the.
There's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
And like things that I guess my dad, maybe his lawyer didn't foresee, or didn't, think, put enough thought into. But there's also like the question over, you mentioned like my dad's intentions. That was, I think, the most important thing to everybody. Like, what did my dad want this money to be used for? And it's just never been super clear. It's a lot of like, well, he told me this. Well, he told me that. And this is what's in the trust agreement. This is what the lawyer says. Well, I hired my own lawyer, and this is what this lawyer says. Literally, like a lot of that kind of stuff. And I think, when my dad was making these decisions, he wasn't in the best health. He was tired. He, might not have been thinking as clearly as, he would have had he made these decisions before he got so sick. And I think that's something I really love and admire about the work you do, because like these are decisions I want to make now, and this experience with my family has made me want to make these decisions when I'm in the clearest of head and be very clear with my intentions for what is going to happen when what I want to happen when I die, when it comes to my money, but when it comes to all aspects of my life, the funeral, like I want to plan all that shit while I'm alive and well. And I want everyone close to me to know the plan and be like, we know this is what Brian would have wanted because he literally said it when he was at his best, not when he was at his worst, not when he was, half asleep in a hospital bed, getting chemo, and not like, oh, he changed his mind a week. Like,
God forbid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't give a lot of advice on the podcast. I let my guests do it. But, how much better are things when everything's calm? I think of a football coach. You're drafting up the entire game plan. You're able to communicate it in a calm voice. And all right, everybody knows what you want. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a minute and a half left in the fourth quarter and the fans are going crazy and, shit's hitting the fan, like that's the last time that you want to be making like a really abrupt, like, let's do, double reverse flea flicker, boom, boom, boom. Like you don't want to be making changes in the last, hours or months of your life when, you're emotional, you're tired. You want to be making those updates in a clear mind with a smile on your face, with the people around you, with the intentions and desires that you want. So
yeah,
I'll give a lot of advice, but I appreciate your appreciation of my work. And I'm very passionate about, helping people design the life that they want and communicate those desires and intentions to the people that they care about.
Amen. Yeah. Design the life they want and design the death they want.
Yeah. To an extent, we can't control all the factors, but you can at least
you can control how.
More the legacy that you want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. But even like I remember my dad's funeral, and I've been to several funerals since my dad died, and I don't know, it always feels so like traditional, religious, and I'm like, was this person religious who were here to mourn? And I don't know, I know that's like maybe outside the scope of your work, but I think the way we do death as a society is, again, very traditional, and there's a lot of good that we can take from tradition. But I'm all about remixing old traditions to make them work for you, adapting ancient wisdom for modern life, because these traditions are, in a lot of cases, ancient, and there's a lot of wisdom in ancient traditions. But how can we like inject some modernity into that, and like what we actually want for ourselves, for our families, what our families might want for us? Because I think there's a lot of good that like the traditional funeral and in the Jewish tradition, Shiva presents, and maybe some room for improvement and innovation.
For sure. I was at a friend's wedding. One of my best high school friends got married this past weekend, and they designed every aspect of the wedding down to a T. If you're designing it for the people that you're leaving behind, and those are the people who love and care about you and who are, get to live in your memory forever. And so why not take that type of care and design it, like you're saying, down to a T? Cool. So with regards to the money and the inheritance, was it life-changing money that you inherited at 23?
Yeah. Not the kind of money that I could, not make any more money the rest of my life and like live the life that I wanted to live. But yeah, it was life-changing money. Life-changing in the sense that it gave me the opportunity to take bigger risks, bigger swings with my career in the immediate aftermath, knowing that I had a bit of a financial safety net, at least for the time being. So, and that really influenced my mindset around like what was possible for me at that time, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have went to Colorado. I don't know if I would have become an entrepreneur shortly after that and build the businesses that I've built if I didn't receive the inheritance that I received. I probably would have left that job again. I'm ready to leave that job, but who knows? Maybe I'd still be in ad sales, maybe a similar profession.
What, like, logistically, what did you do with the inheritance? Did you get advice from somebody? So did you, bet it all on crypto in 2012 and now you're like a multi-bajillionaire? I wish. Or did you have a specific, hey, I know myself or my mom may need this amount of money in the next couple of years. Like, here's the money that I don't need for the long term. Were there any like logistical or nuanced steps financially that you made?
Well, I inherited my dad's account with UBS. So, and one of his best friends was his financial advisor. So I inherited him too.
Okay.
And we didn't work together for very long. And that was a tough breakup. But I learned some things from him. Long story short, didn't love the way that he was managing my money, and ended up finding a different financial advisor through my uncle, actually, a few years later, and started investing more on my own, making more of my own financial decisions, taking more ownership. But that was really hard. I carried and honestly still do a little bit to this day, a lot of guilt around the money that I inherited because I didn't earn it. It was my dad's hard-earned wealth. and I shied away from it. I continued to live very frugally, again, because I was like taking risks with my career and in the hope that of like a, you know, payoff, or again, like doing work that I loved in hope that I could get it to the place where it could support my life and the life that I want for my now family. And I've gotten there, but I'm 13 years removed from my dad's death. So in those first few years, it was like, yeah, just a lot of guilt around it, and like feelings of like I'm not worthy, and I'm not worthy of more. You know, I received this inheritance. I'm good. I don't deserve any more than this. So I did a lot of work for a long time without much compensation, like a lot of, and this went into like how I priced even like early. So my business now is called Third Nature. It used to be called Startup Island. This went into like how I priced early Startup Island trips, you know, and the way I built even the business prior to that. Just a lot of decisions that I made in the interest of like protecting what I had, but also like almost resisting or rejecting more. And because there was just this intense guilt for what I already had. Why do I deserve anymore?
I felt very similar. And when I first started my financial planning, well, first off, I completely pivoted my major, my senior, or my career path, my senior year, to be like, all right, I just went through this financial hellhole being the executor and personal representative of my dad's estate. And I just have got like dumped a boatload of money in my lap that I didn't earn, nor do I feel worthy of. I feel guilty now that I have this money and not my dad. How can I help people who are navigating that? And also, how do I learn as much as possible in my 20s about personal finance so that, I don't end up like that guy, like that, those people in the newspaper that, blown X millions of dollars gambling in Las Vegas or Abu Dhabi or whatever. Um, I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be like prudent and responsible, but I didn't know even what that meant. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's interesting how you channeled that towards your purpose, because I think we both did that. For me, it was like how I used those feelings of guilt. It was also around like, you know, my ability to build a life that I love. I think through the work that I've been able to do over the last 13 years, and everything I learned from the way that my dad lived, the way that he died, the way that he raised me, the way that both my parents raised me, my experience growing up with a sister with special needs, all my lived experience has, led to me, enabled me to now build a life I love. I love my life. And again, there's some guilt around that, because it's like, well, would I love my life if I didn't receive that inheritance? Would I be doing this work if I didn't receive that inheritance? Or an even scarier thought, if my dad was still alive, right? And but the way I've channeled that is like, I create experiences that help other people design lives that they love. And it's helped me when other people say, third nature works. When we say, come to Third Nature summer camp, or, bring Third Nature into your workplace, we'll help you be more engaged and fulfilled in all areas of your life, work, your personal life, your relationships. And then people say Third Nature works. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
I know. That's worth it. And
Yeah.
you're impacting people's lives, and you know we can't live it any other way. And so we just got to do the best with what we have, and this is the hand that we were dealt. Yeah. Brian, as we wrap up the financial section of the pod, I want to ask kind of a two-parter here. Was there any bad advice that you got regarding the money or any of the assets? And what were, if any, financial or logistical resources that you wish you had at your disposal besides this podcast, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and yes. So I mentioned that my dad's financial advisor that I inherited, essentially, he gave a lot of bad advice. He gave some good advice and some bad advice, and did a lot of things with our money that I realized were either short-sighted or, looked good on paper, but in retrospect
Is
were
there a
bad.
specific example,
I
like
mean,
moving everything to cash or
he was
structured?
really into these Yannis. This is like kind of getting it really, really in the weeds here, but these securities where there was you like essentially bought a stock, but there was a guaranteed like monthly rate of return. So I remember, for example, like we bought Twitter and it gave like a 7% dividend. And but if the stock and that was like, you know, the value in the security. But if the stock, it was all dependent on like the stock price. If the stock dropped to a certain level, it would get called back.
Mm-hmm.
This is years ago, like,
Yeah.
but I remember, like, I was like, wow, I own Twitter stock and get 7%, like, dividend. I forget if it was whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it looked really good on paper, but then like a lot of the stocks, they were sold because they weren't great stocks, and a lot of them did hit that call price or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
ended up losing a decent amount of money there. So bad, and also just like bad stock picks. He was also a broker, not a fiduciary. So I learned the difference between the two, right? He was largely paid off of commissions on trades. So he was incentivized to like make a lot of trades and
Mm-hmm.
buy a lot of new stuff. Whereas, to my understanding, a fiduciary, and maybe this isn't universal, but the fiduciary I'm with now gets paid a percentage of total assets. So his incentive is not to make a lot of trades; it's to grow wealth. It's to increase the total wealth, the total number.
And just to kind of piggyback there, fiduciary is supposed to put the client's best interest ahead of your own. Additionally, as somebody is going through a life-changing event, death, divorce, even born of a new child, marriage, whatever it might be, you can hire someone for a flat fee potentially, and like a $5,000 or $2,000, whatever, to help you navigate that life-changing event and put a plan in place that may specialize in that specific area, and not solely focus on investment management as well. So, there's a lot of different specialists out there that can help a variety of different things. But part two of the question was, were there any financial or logistical resources you wish you had?
Well, I wish, I'm not just tooting your horn, Justin, but I wish we had someone like you that we all got to talk to before my dad died. I think that's a big thing. By the time he was gone, it felt like almost like it is what it is. We're working with what we got, and we're going to do our best to move forward. Whereas if we had someone like you, maybe even someone like me, to just initiate, like me now, to initiate these important but difficult conversations when my dad was still, alive and well, or well enough to participate in those conversations. I think that would have saved us a lot of grief, a lot of financial grief, and just like interpersonal grief within the family over these last 13 years.
Mm-hmm. What questions or conversations do you wish you would have had with your dad?
Oh, man. I wish we got more time to talk about my childhood and my experience with him as a dad, and kind of, work through some of the tension that I felt, the things that I've had to or gotten to process through therapy after he died. My dad wrote me a letter. I have it right here. I read it before this podcast because I thought it would be a nice primer for this conversation. He wrote me this letter when my parents got separated. So again, 4 or 5 years before he died. He shared a lot in this letter about life, our family, work. This was like right before I went to college. So advice around like how to navigate the college experience. And I don't know how I replied to this letter. Like, I don't remember my response to this letter. But when I read it now, I'm like, again, my dad was a complicated guy, and it was hard to connect on a deeper level a lot of, the 23 years that I knew him. But he was kind of a good writer, and he expressed himself really well in this letter, and I don't know how I responded. And I wish I initiated more of the kinds of conversations, like went deeper into the kinds of stuff that he brought up in this letter in the 4 years between when he wrote it and when he died. And I just wish I was around more in the last few months of his life. I mentioned I had just moved into the city, was navigating my first year out of school, new relationship, new job, and just trying to be a normal 23-year-old, but with a sick and dying father. And I just wish I was able to prioritize. Again, you asked if like what resources I wish I had around then. I wish I had access to me now, and some of the regrets that I have. But can I just read the first paragraph of his letter? Because I think it kind of drives the point home. Is that cool? It's like a 4-page letter, but it starts, "Dear Brian, I'm writing you to try to express some of my feelings about you, our family, and life in general. We never really have the time to sit down and talk. I know you at 18 don't have the patience to listen to your father preach. Most kids don't want to hear it, so I'll write it. As you get older, our bond will get stronger, as will our friendship, and hopefully we'll be able to sit and talk as friends." And, I felt like we were getting to that point. I felt like we could have gotten to that point. So I wish I initiated those, conversations that we could have had as friends. Again, I was in college. I was in Michigan. I was just navigating my own life. But and I guess I thought this larger than life man, my dad, my idol, would live forever. So I thought we had more time to have those conversations, and clearly he did too. So yeah, there are a lot of questions, a lot of conversations that I wish we had, but um, we actually, in a way, we have. So I'll plug experience camps here. So at experience camps with the LITs, which is the leaders in training at the kids camps, and we also do this at the adult camps, we have everyone write a letter to their person who died. And I've done this exercise multiple times. And at one of our FTA weekends, our adult camps, a participant offered the invitation to write a letter from your person to you. And since then, my dad and I have had this kind of correspondence where I'll write a letter to him one year and he'll write a letter back to me. I'm writing both letters, but I'm doing my best to channel him in what I write. And man, that's been incredibly powerful and therapeutic. So a lot of conversations I wish we had, but in a way, I've been able to have them, as best I can, given that he's no longer here.
Yeah. It's a special exercise to be able to write. I feel like I haven't done that in a while, which is why I need to come to FTA, but write my dad and, understand what he would say if he were to write to me back. As we wrap up here, Brian, are there any, so your dad imparted a lot of lessons to you, lessons in that letter, and I'd love to hear what lessons you would love to leave to our audience and to our listeners.
Don't put off the life you want. If you have been waiting to take that leap, to take that big swing, that risk, try something that you feel like you would be really good at, don't wait. We could all be dead tomorrow. And I think it's important to meditate on that. I actually have a book here called Memento Mori. So Memento Mori means remember death in Latin. It's a Stoic philosophy. And a lot, I mentioned, ancient wisdom. A lot of ancient religions and cultures have this tradition of meditating on death to help them live a more full life. So yeah, remember you will die, and use that to live the life that you truly intrinsically want to live, and apply that to your work, apply that to your relationships, all areas of your life. Don't wait.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible episode. Brian, how can people find you?
LinkedIn is probably the social platform that I'm on most often. Connect there. I share content there around some of the themes that we discussed, and some of the stuff that I do with my business, Third Nature. I have a Substack newsletter that I send every other Monday. And come to FTA. I'll plug both FTA and Third Nature Summer Camp. So Third Nature Summer Camp is our kind of flagship offering, adult summer camp weekend for people who want to live with intention and build lives that they love. We do workshops, morning movement, and just shared living, right? It's this place where we flip the default from a world that is, I think in a lot of ways, systemically and structurally disconnected to a temporary alternative world where deep, meaningful connection to self, others, and nature is the default setting. That's what Third Nature Summer Camp's all about. More on our website. So you can check out Third Nature Summer Camp or check out experience camps for the adults, the adult grief weekends that Justin's going to be at next year. We're going to hold him accountable to that. Back. What was that?
I said, you here first.
Yeah. And yeah, those are two of my favorite experiences. Yeah, we do 2 FTA weekends, 1 Third Nature Summer Camp weekend, 3 of my favorite weekends of the year. Great place for us to connect if you want. And that's where I prefer. You know, you could find me on social, but find me in real life, in nature.
IRL. Yeah, I also love, your basically the first main big decision that you made after your loss was going into nature and journaling and reflecting. And now you lead experiences that allow people to do that. I mean, How full circle is that?
And I just want to say one more thing. It took a while to get there, right? So when I said earlier, like, don't wait to build the life you love. Yes, don't wait, and don't expect it to happen overnight, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to take a lot of small and some big steps and patience. But act now, take those first steps now, or keep walking the path if you're already on it. I always think of I want to continuously move my world closer to the world that I want to live in. Continuously move the way that I am spending my time closer in closer alignment to the way I want to be spending my time, right? That's a lifelong process. And I'm excited for the infinite game that is, right? I don't want to win that game. I just want to keep playing for the rest of my life.
For sure. We typically ask about grief mantras and words of wisdom, specifically for people. So I'm imagining a 23-year-old boy who 23-year-old boy who just lost their dad. And what are your grief mantras and words of wisdom? So I just want to reiterate, it's going to take time. Act now and take the steps to design the life that you want to live, and make the most out of the time that you have.
And thank you. I would love to say to my 23-year-old self, thank you for the hell that you're going through, for moving through it, for not avoiding it. I know it's hard right now, but thank you so much for creating the life that I'm living now.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Currency of Grief. Don't forget, it's a great day to have a great day. So go have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Currency of Grief podcast. My hope is that today's conversation brought you clarity, comfort, and even a spark to start those difficult but necessary conversations in your own life. If you found this episode helpful, it would mean the world to me if you would share it with one other person who you feel this podcast could impact. And please, take a moment to leave us a 5-star review. Your review will help us reach more people who need this resource. Remember, the best time to talk about death and money was yesterday. The second best time is now. Until next time, I'm Justin Weidenfeld, your Grief Financial Officer, and this has been the Currency of Grief podcast.